Universitas Majung merupakan tempat di mana pengetahuan dan inovasi berkomitmen sejak tahun 2007. Universitas Majung menawarkan lingkungan yang nyaman untuk belajar sehari-hari karena letaknya yang cukup strategis di Kota Malang. Memasuki satu dekade pertama, Universitas Majung menerapkan sistem trilingual, yaitu mewajibkan mahasiswa untuk menggunakan bahasa Indonesia, bahasa Inggris, dan bahasa Mandarin. Universitas Majung berkomitmen untuk memberikan kualitas pendidikan yang tinggi dan pendidikan berkarakter. Universitas Majung memiliki 3 fakultas, yakni yang pertama, Fakultas Ekonomi Bisnis, yang kedua, Fakultas Sains Teknologi, dan yang terakhir adalah Fakultas Bahasa dan Seni. Universitas Majung memiliki 10 program studi, antara lain International Business Management, akuntansi, sistem informasi, teknik industri, kimia, farmasi, desain komunikasi visual, teknik informatika, pendidikan bahasa Mandarin, dan sastra Inggris. Integritas 12 nilai-nilai yang ditanamkan kepada mahasiswa, yaitu orisinal, terpercaya, gigih, kreatif, dinamis, ramah dan menyenangkan, meritokratik, profesional, bertanggung jawab, sinergi, rendah hati, citizenship. Universitas Majung juga memberikan pendidikan karakter dalam banyak bidang sosial, pengembangan diri, bakat dan minat, kepemimpinan, penalaran. Universitas Majung dalam global bekerja sama dengan beberapa perusahaan, di antaranya adalah Microsoft, Oracle, Cisco, ISEC, Danareksa, Prometric, ADGI, dan lainnya. Selain itu, Universitas Majung memiliki kegiatan untuk mahasiswanya, antara lain road track, Majung Pecinta Alam, basket, astronomi, Majung Music Club, dan lainnya. Itulah komitmen kami untuk terus mengembangkan pendidikan di Kota Malang. Universitas Majung, build a brighter tomorrow.
Have you ever been to Indonesia?
Follow us.
Perfect weather.
Authentic. Immersion.
flavor.
Discover yourself.
All right, so hello everyone. Welcome to the international webinar. This is the second international webinar the Faculty of Languages and Arts, Machung University in Machung, has conducted. This is a very special event because I have very special presenters. So the theme for the webinar is implementing effective remote teaching during the pandemic. Okay, so there are three presenters for the webinar. So I'd like to introduce these presenters to you, and later they are going to introduce themselves during the presentation. The first is going to be Professor Patricius. He is the professor teaching at English Letter Study Programs at Machung, Universitas Machung. And the second is, I usually call her Mbak Santi Budi Lestari. She is now in UK, United Kingdom. And in United Kingdom, now, this Mbak Santi told me, it is still 2 a.m., very early in the morning. So we are in Indonesia at 9 o'clock. So we just started the day. But people in UK are supposed to sleep now. But Santi is very kind, so she's willing to do presentations today for all of us. And the last is a friend of mine. She's one of the best teachers. She is now in Mexico. She is in Mexico. I'd like to introduce Araceli Salas. And now in Mexico, it's about 9 p.m. if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so before we are going to listen to the presentations. I'd like to tell everyone about uh, how you could ask question and how would you do before the webinar is going to end. So you could type your questions in the chat box. In case we have plenty of time, you can also do some raise hand, and we're gonna have a what's the questions and answers later, right? But before all presentations are done with their presentation, okay? And each presenters would be given about 30 minutes to do the presentations. The first would be for Professor Jiwandono, Pak Patricius, and the second will be for Mbak Santi, and the last will be for Araceli Salas. Okay? So before the webinar is going to end, the links for the attendant will be given by the committee, okay? And also the evaluations link as well. Okay, without further ado, I would like to ask Pak Patricius. Are you ready, Pak Patricius?
Okay, thank you, Pak Daniel, for.
Okay. So, good luck for your presentation, Pak Patricius. Okay, take it over.
Thank you, Pak Daniel. Good morning, everyone, and good early morning for Mbak Santi, my new colleague in England, and good evening for Araceli, farther in Mexico. We are all far apart, but now we feel close together. Yeah, thanks to the modern technology. Okay, let me introduce myself. My name is Patricius Jiwandono. I've been teaching for almost 27 years. It's been a long time, but I keep learning something new. And one of the things that I have learned recently is the material or the topic I would like to share with you today. Yeah, it's called cognitive multimodal learning. Yeah. I would like to start my presentation with a short story that I experienced. Now, after I tell my story, then I will share my PowerPoint slides. Yeah. So the story happened a few months ago. I was searching for something exciting over YouTube, and I came across a video by a fans of Elon Musk. You know Elon Musk, the one who created SpaceX and Tesla. There was a video in which he talked about how to build a rocket company. 5 ways to produce or to create or to build a rocket company. And as I was watching the video and he was talking about all the stuff there, on the screen I could see some scenes of his company, his subordinates, his people, his crew, gathering in a lab, yeah, doing their stuff there, building the rockets. Also the screen showing rockets being launched from the pad, yeah, and one of the boosters coming back down to Earth to be used again. Yeah, on all of those merrymaking and all of the, you know, all the important events during the company's progress. And all along, Elon Musk was explaining in the background how to build a space company, how to build a rocket. Yeah, and at the end of the presentation, I was wondering how come I could not understand what Elon Musk was talking about. And something must be wrong. Yeah. It must, Elon Musk was talking accurately in English, and I could listen. My English proficiency was also good. It's also good. Yeah. So I don't think there should be a problem with that. Yeah. But something had kept me from fully understanding what he was saying. And so let this question remain the question until I finish my presentation. Yeah. At the end of my presentation, we all will know why I had difficulties in understanding Elon Musk's explanation on his YouTube. Yeah. Okay, now let me share my PowerPoint. Yes, so this is my topic today, online teaching based on cognitive multimodal theory. So the background of this theory is actually cognitive multimedia learning, or let's say for short CML, is proposed by Mayer and Moreno back in 2000. Little did people know that actually it would come very helpful and very relevant 20 years later. Yeah. Now, let me tell you about something about the background. I will compare the conventional teaching, in which conventional teaching was actually predominantly one-way lecture, where students read silently, and then students and teachers share the same physical classroom. But that was before the pandemic. Now today, online learning becomes the norm. We are used to online learning. We have to do the online learning, and thus teaching techniques need to be modified. So we could no longer teach the way we did before the pandemic. We somehow have to adapt our way of teaching so that it could still be effective. Now that's when CML, yeah, cognitive multimedia learning, comes into play. So actually, CML, or cognitive multimedia learning, draws on the dual coding principle. We call it dual coding principle. What is meant by dual coding principle is actually as simple as this picture shows you. Actually, we human beings process information through two different channels. One is visual, yeah, those that come to our brain from our eyes, yeah, that's visual. So the things that we look at, the things that we read, the things that we see with our eyes are the visual input, and they go through the visual channel. Yeah. And then not only that, but also things that we hear also come to our ears and then right to our brain to be processed further. That's auditory. So dual coding principle believes that human beings understand information and comprehend information through two different channels, visual and auditory. Yeah. Now, visual input comes in the form of texts. So the text that you read, the slides, the writing on my slide, the photos and the video that you see on YouTube, yeah, actually are the visual input, because you see them with your eyes, and then your eyes input or put that information into your brain, and then your brain process it further, keeping it in the short-term memory, and then in the long-term memory, ready to be retrieved later. Yeah. And verbal is actually the other meaning of auditory. Verbal comes in the form of teacher's voice. So as you are listening to me now, you are actually receiving verbal input. Yeah. And also if you watch video, the voice from the video is the verbal input from the video right into your processing mechanism in your brain. Yeah. Now there are some principles of CML which could be useful for our teaching. First is a spatial contiguity. Now in spatial contiguity, text and pictures must be put close to each other. Otherwise, your viewers or your students will have difficulty understanding the connection between them. Yeah. So spatial contiguity is the first principle. And then you have temporal contiguity. Temporal contiguity means that the text and pictures are presented almost at the same time or sequentially. Yeah, you can imagine how hard it is to understand a picture in which a picture in which the explanation comes 10 minutes later. Yeah, that would tax your cognitive ability to understand what is going on or what is being explained there. And then modality, this principle means pictures and text with narration, with voice narration, are understood better, tend to be understood better than if they are presented alone without narration. Yeah. So as you are listening to me now, my narration actually helps you understand what is being presented over the screen. If I just leave the screen just like that for you to read without my narration, and that would interfere with your understanding. That would make it hard to understand what actually I am explaining without me talking like this. Okay, still you have some principles of CML. You have redundancy. Now redundancy means that the graphics, means all the visual elements, and the narration promote better learning than graphics and on-screen text. Again, this proves the power of narration in helping your understanding. Because human beings process verbal input, it is very helpful for them if they can hear somebody explaining whatever they are watching. That's the principle of redundancy. And then coherence. Coherence means that when you present pictures and music, actually they will affect the concentration. I experienced it myself. Some of the YouTubers like displaying their explanation with some background music in the background. They probably think that it is fun or it is entertaining, but actually it disrupts my concentration. Yeah, I have to concentrate on the narration as well as on the background, on the music. So it's not easy to follow that kind of presentation. And that kind of presentation will be against the principle of coherence. Again, still some principles of CML. Segmenting. Segmenting means that when you present materials over YouTube or over online session, you have to present your materials part by part, little by little. You cannot put too much information on one session, because that will be too heavy for the viewers to process, to understand, or to comprehend what you are explaining. Yeah, that will be what we call a cognitive overload. Simply, the reader's mind will not be able to cope up with the flows of information, flows of details and concepts and all of the information coming all together, all at one time. So that's why you need to segment it. When you have lots of materials to be presented or to be taught to your students, it is good to segment it, to present it part by part. And at the end of every part, you make sure that the students understand it well before you move on to the next part. And then personalization, this is my favorite. This means that narration delivered in a conversational and casual style tends to promote better understanding. Yeah, okay, let me give you an example for this. Okay, so suppose I am explaining to you the concept of nominalization, and this is the way I present it. Nominalization is a process by which an entity or concept is expressed as a noun. By stating it as a noun, the writer or the speaker imposes a certain undisputable fact that it exists on the reader's or listener's mind. This is called existential presupposition. Now compare that with this one. Okay, so students, we are going to talk about design features. Now, what is design features? Design features are the differences between human communication and animal communication. So you have to realize now that actually there is a difference between the way we communicate and the way apes or dogs or cats communicate. Yeah? The design features include prevarication, which means that humans can tell a lie or truth. I think this is an undeniable fact, right? We all can tell a lie, and also we can tell the truth. Yeah? And also another one is displacement. Displacement means talking about something that is not here and now. For example, today you are talking to your friends, but the topic of your chat is your holiday in London 2 years ago. Yeah, so it's not here and now, and that's called displacement. Okay, so the way I present the second one is more personal because it is presented with conversational and friendly style. That's not the case with the first one. Yeah. And then, according to CML, the first one will be harder to understand because it's not presented in a conversational style. Okay, let me continue. Some more principles. Voice, narration from human beings tend to be better understood than robots. So if you probably once you listen to explanation on YouTube and you feel that the voice is not quite natural, then that's because it is spoken by robots and not by human beings. Yeah. And signaling means that if you present outline of the topics of your lecture, that will help comprehension of your students. Now, there is also one important point. This is not from CML, but this is based on my experience. It's called protecting the message. Protecting the message means that you have to make sure you deliver the important points by adding some extra words around the most essential points. Because you are not face-to-face with your students, then whenever you present something, you have to make sure that that concept that you are explaining really gets to their mind. And that's why you have to protect the message. And protecting the message can be done by adding several words around the concepts, around the important concepts that you are presenting. For example, if you want to explain discourse, you can go like something like discourse is a structure of language, which is meaningful, purposeful, and unified. But that's not enough. You have to protect the message. You have to make sure that all of this is clear in the student's mind as they perceive it. So you can say something like, discourse is a structure of language, which is meaningful. Meaningful means you get the meaning, you get the sense, you can make sense of whatever is presented. Yeah. Also, it is purposeful. Discourse is purposeful. It has a certain goal to achieve. And it is unified. Unified means that it talks about a certain topic, one single topic only, and does not talk about another topic. So that's what is meant by discourse. See, I have added some words around the word meaningful, purposeful, and unified. I protected the message. I make sure that students understand what is written on my slide. That's called protecting the message. Okay, now let me address some frequent wrong practices that I have watched, and I feel that's not quite right, at least as far as CML is concerned. So, asking students to read a very long text without narration. As I said before, this is going to tax their cognitive resource. Yeah? It's going to make it harder to understand than if you present it with narration. So this is cognitive overload principle. Yeah, the more text you present without any narration, the harder it is for the students to understand. But once you put your narration over that, it's going to be easier for the students to understand. Yeah. presenting too many stimulus. As I said before, when you present something, just put aside the music and probably all of the accessories that might come in onto the screen. Yeah, some stickers here and there. Yeah, you think it is fun, but actually it disrupts your students' concentration. Yeah. So this is what we call redundancy principle. Visual input, which is not related or relevant to verbal input. Now, occasionally this is done. Occasionally, I saw some people or even some colleagues do this. Yeah. They present something over this on the screen, and then they talk about something else. And that's also not relevant. That's also not helpful for your students to understand what you are actually saying or what you are actually talking about, because the verbal input is not relevant to the visual input. Playing background music to a narration. I addressed this before, so it is best to avoid playing the background music when you are explaining about something serious, about an important concept, or a long explanation of something. The background music will only distract your students' attention. This is against the coherence principle. Okay, now you can see this picture. It's Stephen Hawking, right? Everybody knows him, the late Stephen Hawking. And okay, as you can see this picture, then imagine that I discuss black hole. I would say something like, Stephen Hawking came up with a theory of black hole. You know what black hole is? Black hole is actually a super dense star. It was once a star, but now then it exploded, and then it's dead. When it is dead, it shrinks into a very dense but small object with the gravitational power so strong that it could not, even light could not escape it. Everything will be sucked into it. That's black hole. Now imagine that you are looking at this picture of Stephen Hawking on my screen, and then listening to me talking about something else. And it's not a good practice. According to cognitive multimedia learning, it's not an effective way of presenting a concept. Yeah. So a better way will be following what is presented here. So as you can see, this is a biographical sketch of Stephen Hawking, and you can accordingly explain to your students what is written here with your narration voice, friendly and personalized style, conversational style that will help your students process better. Yeah. Maybe this is the last one. It's called generative principle. It means that once the students finish listening to your explanation, then you can have them generate their understanding. What I mean by generate is they can rehearse whatever they have comprehended from your lecture. They can rehearse whatever you have been presenting to them. Yeah. And this is a very simple formula, is if you cannot explain it simply, you probably have not understood it. So you have to say that. So you have to say this to your students, saying that, okay, now can you explain what I have been telling you? If you cannot explain it simply, maybe you have not understood it. Yeah. When the ability to explain some concepts simply and clearly is actually a sign of understanding. So if you can explain a concept simply, if you can explain it to a layperson and that person understands very clearly your explanation, then you can actually understand it. It is a sign that you have understood the concept. You can apply this whenever you have finished your teaching. You can ask your students to rehearse this practice. Yeah. So you can explain the topic to yourself. You can tell the students, okay, explain the topic to yourself. Make sure that you can understand it. Yeah. And then once it is done, you can tell the students to explain it again to their classmates. If their classmates understand the explanation, then it is a sign that the students have understood, have grasped the concept relatively well. Yeah, that's called generative principle. So we are moving from students listening to your explanation through the CML principles to generative principles in which they have to explain it themselves. If they can explain it clearly and simply, and other people can understand it, then it's a sign that actually they have understood the materials of the topics. Yes, I guess that's all. I hope this it's going to be useful for you, for your teaching, and I'm looking forward to having a discussion with you. Thank you, Pak Daniel. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Professor Patricius Siwandono, for great presentation. Today, it's very special because we have new knowledge and new information about how to teach online effectively, and Patricius has introduced to us dual, cognitive multimedia learning. So everyone, you're welcome to ask Patricius the question. So you can unmute your audio and just the question. So let me and let Patricius listen to your question if you have question, okay? And the question will be answered later, but okay, please, I welcome everyone to ask question. Before we are going to listen to next presentation, but Santi. Okay, everyone, please, you're welcome to ask question to Patricius first, okay? Yeah. You can unmute your audio. This is very interesting topic. Is there anyone who wants to ask question? Not yet. Okay, you can ask questions later. Yeah, there will be question and answer sessions later. Okay, now let's listen to next presentation from Mbak Santi. Mbak Santi.
Yes,
Okay.
right. So I think.
Yeah. Okay, you can take it over.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. A minute. Okay. Right. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Indonesia. It's very early in the morning, so I think it's 3:30 in the morning here in the UK. And good evening to Araceli in Mexico. I hope you're all healthy and safe at the moment. My name is Santi. I'm a PhD researcher at Lancaster University. I'm currently doing research in the area of language testing and assessment. And today I'll be sharing with you about assessing second language speaking and writing online, reliability, validity, and fairness considerations. Within the next half an hour, I won't certainly be able to cover everything on this topic, but I hope I'll start a discussion on this topic. So while I'm speaking, if you've got any questions, you can type your questions in the chat box. And I'd like also to make it clear from the start that my presentation is not going to be really about how to move assessments online. Rather, it's going to be more about what needs to be considered when we assess productive language skills online. And while this topic is not actually specific to teaching or assessing during this pandemic, I hope it's of course it's going to be still relevant to the current situation. And I think it's going to be even, more relevant later in the future, because I think now we've got like more and more online assessment regardless of the situation. So here is the outline of my talk. I'll begin by briefly reviewing the concepts of reliability, validity, and fairness, and then I'll move on to discussing considerations concerning assessing second language writing and speaking online. Right, let's begin. So reliability, validity, and fairness. So definitely I'm not going to go into detail because I'm sure these are not new concepts to all of you. So I'm just going to review them briefly just to make sure that we've got the same understanding. Reliability generally refers to the notion of consistency and dependability of test performance as reflected in the test score. And in the context of writing and speaking assessment, reliability can be influenced by a range of factors, including the raters or the examiners, the examiner training, for example, marking schemes or rubrics or rating scales, or even how many tasks that we've got for our students. And then validity, as you know, I think it's often to do with the question, does the test measure what it claims to measure? Okay, but looking at validity as a property of the test itself is actually a bit sort of outdated, I can say. So a more modern view doesn't actually see validity as an inherent property of the test per se, but it's more about the validity of test interpretation and test score interpretation and use. So validation is seen more as a kind of ongoing process, starting from test design all the way to test score reporting, interpretations, and use. And finally, fairness, I think it's quite sort of self-explanatory. It's about unbiased treatment of all test takers, regardless of gender, geographical locations, access to technology, and so on. So these three concepts are actually very much interrelated. Reliability is an integral part or component of validity, and reliability is necessary to ensure validity. And in turn, validity is necessary to ensure fairness. So again, they're all like very, very well connected to one another. Now, let's take a look at how online test delivery mode may actually impact reliability, validity, and fairness. Yes, because delivery mode, in this case, online delivery mode that we're talking about, may actually influence construct definition, or basically like the things that we really want to measure. And also it may influence learner performance, and finally it may also influence scoring procedures, which in turn may influence reliability, validity, and fairness. So now let's begin with the assessing writing online. I'll begin with what things we need to consider. Okay. Right. Okay. So there are many things that we need to consider when we design our writing test, especially when it's going to be delivered online. Some of these are actually not exclusive to online writing assessment, but I included them here because they might be influenced by the fact that we are administering the test online. And there might be some other things as well that are not here, but also important. But I think these sort of cover the most important ones. So we've got the target construct, which basically means the thing that you really want to measure. It's about writing, but you can't possibly measure everything about writing in one task or one test or one assessment instrument. So you need to define very, very clearly what kind of writing that you want to measure. And then we need also to think about the task type and the format. For example, writing only or integrated writing, which I think links very well to what Professor Patricius mentioned earlier. It's about multimodality. So in integrated writing, you don't just require them to write, but perhaps you provide them with some listening input or reading and listening. And then they have to produce a piece of writing on the basis of the input texts. So again, it's got to do with the principle of multimodality. And then we need to think about the task condition, whether it's going to be a timed writing task or untimed. And of course, because it's online, you need to think about the technological means, which include things like access, for example, to technology or to device, and then the submission platform, and whether or not you will allow your learners to use word processor. And finally, of course, about scoring procedures, how you're going to score the learner's performance. Okay? Right. In any writing assessment, our primary variable of interest is, of course, the writing skills of our students. Like, we want to know how well they have achieved the learning goal, and that's what you want to measure, okay? But when you move it online, there are a couple of extra things which might not be your primary interest, but they might influence your learner's performance. So things such as computer familiarity or technological skills, which may include things like keyboarding skills, like, you know, typing skills, or their familiarity with word processor, or their familiarity with the learning management system. And the question is then, will these skills affect our learners' performance? If so, will they facilitate or will they hinder, and to what extent? And should we actually include these computer familiarity related skills in the construct that we want to measure? The answer is, it depends. I know it's a cliche, but let's take a look. One example. So if ability to use technology, which means, you know, to use the word processor or to type or to use technology, is important in written communication in your learner's target language use. In the target language use means the context in which your learners will use the language that they are learning. If ability to use technology is important for them in the context in which they're going to use the language, then it's justifiable to actually include keyboarding skills and word processor in the construct, because we can say that these skills are construct relevant. One example is, for example, you teach, if you teach English university level, so you perhaps teach English for academic purposes, and you know that your learners will need to type their essays or their term papers, and they will need to be able to submit their term papers online in their other courses. So in that case, then it's probably fine to also consider keyboarding skills and other related skills related to technology as construct relevant. But again, this is just an example, and your context may be different, and you need to sort of consider what is relevant, what is considered as construct relevant in your context. The effects of test delivery mode on learners' writing performance has been quite widely studied, actually, although mostly in standardized large-scale testing contexts. So now let's take a look at findings from one such study. Right, it's a 2018 study done by Barkowi and Nosy. So they looked at the impact of delivery mode, in this case online or computer-based, and on paper, so computer-based and paper-based, and they used the IBT, the internet-based TOEFL independent writing task, which is essentially an essay writing task. And they found that writing mode online, or computer-based, I should say, computer-based and paper-based had significant effect on the learners' writing features, but not on scores. Okay, isn't it interesting? The features of writing that they produced were significantly different, but the scores were not statistically significantly different. So they found that writing on computer improved fluency, content, cohesion, and syntactic and lexical complexity. So again, it's interesting. And we can say then that writing on computer was actually found to facilitate students to produce better writing. Perhaps it's due to the fact that when they type, they can actually edit or revise more flexibly, and therefore these improvements. And then they also looked at the impact of keyboarding skills, and they found that keyboarding skills had significant but small effects on writing features and scores. So again, it's something to think about when you move your writing assessment online. Okay, but again, so the study that I've shown you earlier and the example I gave you earlier were from the context of English as a second or foreign language. And, it might be different in other contexts where the target language is not English. So let's take a look at like other foreign languages like Arabic, Chinese, or Japanese, for example, where learners usually learn to write by hand. If there are any Chinese teachers here in the audience, you probably can let me know later. I think most of the time the learners learning these languages, they learn to type, or not to type, they learn to write by hand, especially if they're still at a lower sort of proficiency level. So in that case, delivery mode and keyboarding skills may have more prominent effects on their performance. Again, because they are not used to typing in those target languages, and if they suddenly are required to type, it might not be fair to them. It might not be, it might impact the validity as well, because it's going to be considered as construct irrelevant. Okay? Right, now let's move on to this speaking on, assessing speaking online. Okay, I'll start with what to consider again. First of all, the target construct, like what of speaking skills that you want to measure using your particular task or test or assessment instrument. And then you need to operationalize that into the task type and format. For example, whether you're going to use a monologic task, like speech or presentation, whether you're going to put them in pairs and they have to do a role play, for example, or in groups, and also the kind of task that you want them to do, whether it's going to be a speaking only, for example, you give them a question and they have to speak, or it's an integrated task, which involves multimodal inputs. For example, you provide them with a short listening input, and then they have to summarize that, or they have to respond to that, whatever is conveyed in the listening. So that's a possible task type. And then you need to decide whether it's going to be a synchronous speaking test or asynchronous. Again, it depends on the context, or also probably on the available means, and whether it's going to be a prepared speech or presentation, for example, or more sort of spontaneous speaking. And technological means, again, because it's online, whether you've got the access, whether your learners have got the access to the necessary technological device, and whether or not, for example, it's going to be audio or video format of speaking, and the platform, and etc. And then the role of teacher, your role, whether you are going to be the examiner, are you going to be the only examiner, or you're going to have like a teacher from another class also help you examine your students? And depending on the task type, you might have to be the interlocutor at the same time. Okay, like for example, if it's in the case of interview, so you interview your students. So in that case, you are delivering or administering the test while probably you're marking their performance. And finally, rating procedures. Are you going to mark the performances simultaneously as you're delivering the test, or are you going to mark the performances at a later time because probably it's being recorded? Right. So when we assess speaking face-to-face, perhaps before the pandemic, there is usually no technology involved, or probably minimum, like very, very minimum technology involved. And also nonverbal features of communication, things like facial expressions or gestures are available, right? And they might, well, not they might, but they actually enhance meaning. But then when you move that online, there's some technology involved, let's say video conferencing, like what we're using at the moment. And if you're only using audio, and the nonverbal features of communication, facial expressions, gestures, will not be available. Now the question is whether or not these features or these added, aspects will actually affect performance. Right, so in the next couple of slides, I'll discuss some research findings on the effect of delivery mode on learners' performance and ratings of their performance. Right, I'll start with this study by Nakatsuhara et al. Again, it was done a couple of years ago, so it was before the pandemic, certainly. And they were actually studying or investigating IELTS speaking, which many of you might be familiar with. And they were looking at the impact of delivery mode on learners' performance. So let's take a look at what they found. Okay, so fluency, lexis, and pronunciation scores were lower in the video conferencing mode than in the face-to-face mode. But fortunately, the differences were not statistically significant. Oh, so as we know, there are 4 areas of assessment in IELTS speaking: fluency, lexis, pronunciation, and grammar. So in 3 of the 4, so in 3 out of 4 criteria, learners scored lower in the video conferencing mode. Isn't it interesting? It's quite intriguing, actually, although the differences were only negligible. And they also analyzed the spoken production of the test takers. And they found that generally there were no significant differences in most language functions elicited. There were some differences in some language functions, for example, asking for clarification, which was used by more test takers in the video conferencing mode. I think that's pretty, what do you call it? I think that's expected, really, because perhaps because some technology involved, and that might actually influence the flow of communication, and that required test takers to ask for more clarification, or to ask for clarification more often. Still in the same study, Nakatsuhara et al. Also elicited feedback from examiners or interlocutors, because in IELTS speaking, the examiners also act as interlocutors. So let's take a look. So they reported effects of delayed video transmission and poor sound quality on these areas. First, interlocutor speech rate and articulation. So they actually, their speech rate was slower and their articulation was made clearer in the video conferencing mode. And they did it because they wanted to be sure that they would be understood by the test takers. And another area was turn-taking management, which was also affected. And they also reported that their confidence in marking consistency and judgment on pronunciation and grammar was also affected. So they were sort of less confident in their marking consistency when they had to do it online. And in another study, but another publication, but sort of a related study, again by Nakatsuhara et al. This is quite recent. In this study, they looked at the ratings. So they compared ratings across different rating conditions. So there were 3 conditions that they investigated. The first one is the live test, like real-time live. The second one is the audio ratings, they call it. So audio ratings meaning the examiners marked the performances of the students, which were audio recorded. So they actually marked the audio recordings of performances. And video ratings, again, video recordings. And they found that, again, very interesting finding, scores from audio ratings were significantly lower than those from live and video ratings. So again, this one is significant, okay? The differences were significant. So it's got to do with the issue of fairness in this case. The live and the video ratings were actually very similar. And examiners observed more negative features of test taker performances in recorded audio and video ratings. And again, this got to do with the nonverbal features of communication I mentioned earlier. So visual information that was available in video ratings was found to help examiners to better understand what the test takers were trying to communicate. So again, like the visual information is very important, and probably this is related to the first finding, which, sort of explained the first finding. Right, so to conclude, I'd like to go back to this diagram, okay? So we've looked at examples of how delivery mode may actually influence reliability, validity, and fairness, because it influences the construct definition, learner performance, and scoring procedures. Now the question is probably wondering so how much consideration should I give when I sort of move my assessment online? Do I really need to study all these things before delivering or administering the test? I think the answer is it depends on the stakes of the test. By stakes, I mean decisions made on the basis of the test score. So low stakes tests are usually associated with sort of low stakes decisions, and high stakes tests are associated with sort of big decisions and more important decisions. So again, it depends on your context. If you happen to be in charge of really high stakes, important tests, where you know, the test scores will be used to make really important decisions, then it's absolutely necessary for you to pay more attention and to give more consideration, because you want to ensure that it's going to be fair for all your test takers. But on the other hand, if what you're dealing with is more sort of like low stakes assessment, then probably well, you can try as much as you can what you can sort of control or consider. Of course, it's still important to pay attention to all the issues that I mentioned earlier, but probably it's going to be more even important when you are dealing with high stakes assessment. So yeah, I think that brings me to the end of the talk. These are the references, the studies that I mentioned earlier, and I've got 2 other studies here which are also relevant. I didn't mention them, but if you're interested, you can read these studies as well. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mbak Santi. Give applause to you. Very good.
Okay.
Very nice. Okay. Everyone, there are a lot of interesting issues that we can learn from Mbak Santi's presentation. But again, Mbak Santi reminds us that it depends. Okay, I'm back here.
Okay, right.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so anyone, if you want to ask question to Mbak Santi, you're welcome. But if you want to ask question to her later, it's also fine. All right. Now, next presentation will be by Araceli. Okay, Ara, are you ready for your presentation?
I'm
All right,
ready.
okay. Take it over. Good luck.
Okay. I'm going to share my presentation. Okay. Can you see my presentation now?
Yes, very well.
Okay. Well, first, I want to thank you, Daniel, for giving me the opportunity to talk to people on the other side of the world. I am in Mexico, and it's I am not going to complain because Santi is not sleeping at this time. But for me, it's 10 p.m. For you, it's 10 in the morning. So it is nice. It is nice to see people connected in other places in the world. Well, the topic, when Daniel invited me, he told me to talk about the situation that was happening. And well, yes, I thank you very much. My presentation's name is From Doing Research to Publishing in 2020. My name is Araceli Salas. I am doctor in language science here in Mexico. My city is Puebla, and I am 2 hours from Mexico City. And well, that's very far from you, but I'm very happy to be with you through technology. Well, after we listen to Santi and Patricia's, I think that you have very good examples of doing research. Yes. So today I am going to try to convince you to take the next step. These are the objectives of the session. First, I want to raise awareness on doing research during 2020, give attendees an overview on the publishing process in ELT, and encourage attendees to write and publish their work, even in 2020. Well, I have been very lucky because I am I I have been serving as an editor for 3 different journals. One in my school, in my university, but I was also invited to be an associate editor in the Mestizo Journal in Mexico, but it's an international journal. You will see a little about that later. And also, I serve as an editor in the Tizol Journal, which is the small brother of the Quarterly Journal. So right now, I understand how people can turn their research into articles. And that's what I'm going to do. I am going to try to convince you to publish your articles, first to do research, and then to publish your articles as part of your professional development. Okay? Why do we need to do teacher research? Yes, we have seen, as we have seen with Patricius and Santi, teachers research, yes, can help teachers become more confident, effective, and reflective practitioners, more autonomous in their decisions because they are more informed. And this, in the end, would benefit their students or our students in general. Let's see. Probably people think that they are not ready to do research, but who does teacher research in ELT? I think that everybody, in my opinion, everybody can do research in ELT, English language teaching, from pre-service teachers to semi-retired teachers. All teachers, all along their careers, they can conduct some research, and this can conduct to continuous professional development or continuing professional development. So I'm sure that all of you are in one of these stages. Probably I saw very young faces. Yes, so probably there are some pre-service teachers, there are some novice or beginners, there are mid-career or career switchers, people who are taking another position, another role in ELT, veteran teachers or semi-retired teachers. Doing research always brings benefits to teachers. Why? But why doing research when we are so busy, when we are also overwhelmed with what we have to do? I know that that you are also working a lot. I think that we end up working even more in this situation, but why doing research on top of everything? Well, that's exactly why. Because it is a unique year. There are new challenges. You have seen the previous presentations, and they are discovering things. For example, I could relate to this writing. I was really interested what Santi was saying because I think that happens to me when I write. I feel more confident when I am writing on the computer. Well, let me tell you that I don't even handwrite anymore. I usually use the computer because it's easier and I have the opportunity to correct, so I can relate to that. New challenges, new settings, new communities, new ways to interact. There is even new vocabulary like Zoom room or remote teaching, as what we are doing is called. There are new ways to teach, there are new ways to learn, and all of this has to be researched, and all of this has to be explored in order to establish guidelines, to share experiences, and also to avoid future problems. We don't know what's coming in the future. You know what? One of the trends in research recently is about teacher well-being. Suddenly, they discovered that the well-being of teachers is very important. Yes, and I hope this can continue longer, because if teachers are okay, students will be okay. So consider doing some research in that. I'm going to play a very short video and what teachers are doing in other places in the world. Remember that I am on the other side. I am near the United States, and some things might be different for you because I don't really know the culture there, but let's see if this is interesting for you. Wait.
Education. The pandemic has forced Ohio and Kentucky to extend at-home learning until at least May. Indiana already canceled in-person classes for the rest of the school year. WCPO 9 News reporter Josh Bazan explains how educators are quickly adapting to this new reality.
It is called The Three Little Pigs.
Emily Hutchison would normally be reading this book to her students in person, but the reading and math teacher at Norwood City Schools is making do with video lessons for now.
Not by the hair on my chinny chin.
There's not a choice, so you just have to make it the best that you can, and I'm gonna work really hard and just keep trying to learn. And
she's also created interactive lessons like this and has been having daily video chats with most of her reading students, not the same as being there in person, but she says it's pretty close.
all of that has been really helpful.
As we get ready to go on our STEM journey,
Katie and Marshall Dykes, along with their daughters Claire and Lily, star in a series of videos on the Norwood Innovation Lab YouTube page.
we wanted to have that personal connection. We realize we're competing with Xbox and TV now. So trying to make it campy and fun and trying to make fun of ourselves.
Katie teaches STEM and Marshall teaches science at Norwood schools. The videos are full of practical lessons.
Wash your hands!
And fun projects for kids to do with regular stuff they can find around the house, all to try and keep the imagination flowing at home.
So we try to bring a little bit of that into them, just so they don't forget that we are here, we care about them, and we're still trying to get them in education. It's trying to take that kind of experience of the learning and trying to apply that to what we're doing here.
You're telling me that the video, you're not watching the video? Okay, let me, can you watch the video now?
Now, we can watch the video.
No, you cannot
It's supposed
watch
to be delayed. Okay, now. It looks,
Is, of course, education.
Can you watch it now?
yeah, it looks well.
Okay, so let's
The
see.
pandemic has forced Ohio and Kentucky already canceled in-person classes for the rest of the school year.
Thank you.
WCPO 9
Thank you
News
for
reporter
telling me.
Josh Bazan explains how educators are quickly adapting to this new reality.
It is called The Three Little Pigs.
Emily Hutchison would normally be reading this book to her students in person, but the reading and math teacher at Norwood City Schools is making do with video lessons for now.
Not by the hair on my chinny chin.
There's not a choice, so you just have to make it the best that you can, and I'm gonna work really hard and just keep trying to learn. And
She's also created interactive lessons like this and has been having daily video chats with most of her reading students, not the same as being there in person, but she says it's pretty close.
all of that has been really helpful.
As we get ready to go on our STEM journey,
Katie and Marshall Dykes, along with their daughters Claire and Lily, star in a series of videos on the Norwood Innovation Lab YouTube page.
we wanted to have that personal connection. We realize we're competing with Xbox and TV now. So trying to make it campy and fun and trying to make fun of ourselves.
Katie teaches STEM and Marshall teaches science at Norwood schools. The videos are full of practical lessons.
Wash your hands!
And fun projects for kids to do with regular stuff they can find around the house, all to try and keep the imagination flowing at home.
So we try to bring a little bit of that into them, just so they don't forget that we are here, we care about them, and we're still trying to get them in education. It's trying to take that kind of experience of the learning and trying to apply that to what we're doing here.
7th grade world history teacher Sean Weisgerber is trying to share his big personality with the students from afar with a karaoke video challenge. He's recorded some of his lessons on video too, so students can watch when they have free time and video chat with him during office hours with any questions.
In the late medieval unit, we talked about feudalism.
Everybody from parents to teachers to students are all, doing their best to make this work.
Josh Bazan, WCPO 9 News.
Problemas con los cierres de
Well,
con-
these are only some of the examples of what people are doing around the world, and I am sure that Some of you are doing probably not the same, but whatever is possible to attract, to catch the attention of your students. And that needs to be studied, that needs to be researched, yes? Because we are, this unique year has given us the opportunity to share these experiences. Okay, can you see the presentation? Because we're going to continue here now with the presentation.
Yeah, now I'm reading why doing research in 2020.
Okay.
Is that right? Yeah.
So I hope that I have already convinced you that it is very important to do research and to do teacher research. When you do teacher research, you pursue continuing professional development, as we said before, because when you do research, you feel more confident, you feel better. It affects teachers' feelings, self-esteem, self-image, and meaning. It is liberating, it's rewarding, and it's empowering. And I have to say that continuing professional development is also addictive. What are you doing there? Saturday morning, and you are studying. What am I doing here? What is Santi doing here? Because we learn. I think it was Patricia who said that we all learn. We are all willing to learn something new in the middle of everything that is happening, yes? Teacher research has different purposes. For example, to explore their teaching, to know their students, to learn more, as we said, to find solutions for problems, to find a new perspective to an old problem, or to find new perspectives to new problems. Sometimes teachers have to do research because they need to get their degrees. And I know, and I am sure that all teachers have powerful stories. You have stories that I don't know. I have stories that you don't know because of the difference in culture, different in experiences, different in settings, because all classrooms are singular and unique. So all teachers can do research. But now, you need teachers, all of you are teachers, and teachers need support in order to carry out research. What are the things that teachers need to be supported? Teachers need resources. Teachers need research skills. It's something that you learn along the way. Teachers need collaboration, need to collaborate, and they can grow together. Of course, doing research takes time, but from what I've heard, most of what teachers want is recognition. Doing research validates everything that you do in the classroom, yes? Okay, so this is the cycle of research. Now that I have convinced you to do research, and that some of you, the same as my colleagues who presented before, they have done all of these, they have followed all these steps. And what is next? Yes, I know Daniel, I am sure that my colleagues have already published, but probably there are some people who are thinking, who have started thinking about taking this step, because the last step in the cycle of doing research is to publish what you have found, to publish your findings. Why do you need to publish? Why do teachers need to publish their research? First, to share results. Doing research might be a lonely endeavor sometimes. Sometimes you can collaborate, but sometimes you can work on your own. But you need to share results, yes? to complete the research cycle. As we saw before, we have this cycle, so the last part is to publish your research. So you need to complete that research cycle. I am sure that you have much to contribute to the field, yes? Your unique studies, your unique context will contribute to the field to be part of the community of ELT authors. All authors are welcome to this community. And sometimes teachers do research and teachers publish because they need to graduate, or it's one of the requirements for postgraduate programs. Right now in Mexico, many programs are asking the candidates to have at least one publication to get a promotion. In my university, the number of publications are good for promotions. Yes, so it is based on publication. Also, to be somebody in the academic virtual world, have you Googled yourself? Have you Googled your name? What is your name next to? What is your name? And not only next to your Facebook account or something, it would be really nice to see your name, to see yourself in an article, in a chapter, but also to be read and cited. When you publish something, you can be, people around the world can read your work, what you have done, and you can be cited. But it's also good for your self-esteem, as I said before, because you can Google yourself and you will find your name next to a really nice, neat text article. So how do you feel when you think of writing? I would like to see some answers here in the chat. How do you feel when you think of writing? And we mean academic writing. Do you feel excited? Please, could you chat? Could you write your feelings in the chat? How do you feel? Afraid, excited, anxious? I don't see any answers yet, so I'm going to wait for your answers. How do you feel? Do you feel motivated, challenged?
Can I answer that?
Yes, please answer, start. I would like to see an answer here. Very challenging. Oh, yes, yes. It is challenging. I cannot say it's not. You feel useful. Okay. Motivated. Perfect. Yes, yes, yes. What else? Happy. Good for you, Charlene. Is that how you pronounce it? Happy. Perfect. A lot of fun. Well, it's good to know that some people are happy and some people are have fun when they write. Most of the time, people tell me this, and they say that they feel very challenged, as you say, because they say that publishing is not easy. Publishing takes too long. Not all journals are reliable, free, or indexed. And some people are even a little pessimistic, and they say, what is the chat? No. They won't accept my paper. I don't know how to write academically. Yes, to write academically takes time, and you need to really sit and explore analyze what you can do, what you have to do. But let me tell you that it is possible to do. Where can you publish your research? There are two types of journals. There are refereed articles. Well, you can publish refereed articles in refereed journals, which are the ones that have a peer-reviewed evaluation, or indexed journals. Yes, and you can find all over the world different kinds of indexes. And well, that is something because there are some that you have over there. We have others here in Mexico. For example, in Mexico, we have the Latindex, which is a very popular one. But we are here. I have this list, and I will send this presentation to Daniel. All of these journals are free, and they are in the field of ELT. The Mestizo Journal, this is in Colombia. All of these are free journals where you can publish your work. This is on your side of the world. I found this, like the Asian Journal of English Language Studies, the Modern Journal of Studies in Language Teaching and Literature. I found this, the Indonesian Journal of EFL and Linguistics, and the call for publication is open now. Check that, because it's open. Clause Journal, which is Daniel is the editor-in-chief. Also, you have the Indonesian TESOL Journal. So you have different options. But if you are a novice teacher, if you are beginning with that, I can recommend writing for newsletters of teachers associations. Almost all teachers associations have their newsletters, and you can write there. They are peer review. That means that there is a kind of evaluation, but probably not as tough as one from a more established journal. But also from time to time call for chapters in EFL or in ESL or in ELT, and you will always find some calls for publication. However, there are some things you need to learn before. And not all journals are the same. This is the journals where I collaborate. In Lenguas en Contexto, which is one in my university, there I am the editor-in-chief, and in Lenguas en Contexto, the call is annual, and we publish the issue usually July, August. This year it's still in the process because of all the situation. Yes, Mestizo Journal is a very recognized journal. You can check that the name. You can check that, or I can send you the link to this journal. Right now, it's in Scopus. It's in Latindex, as I told you, but it is also in Scopus. And we have received some articles from Indonesia, believe it or not. Yes, here I am an associate editor, and I am also an associate editor for the TESOL Journal. And well, this is a very international, and it is in most of the indexes. Yes, and for example, in Lenguas en Contexto, if you submit your article, you will know if it is accepted in about 6 months, probably because it's at the time that we take in receiving, evaluating, and editing the articles. The Mestizo Journal, the time for publication is more or less 1 year and 2-3 months. That's if the evaluations are constant and you don't stop sending your revisions. And it is a good journal to start publishing. The Mestizo Journal has a very unique philosophy. This is not like they tell you it's accepted or it's not. It's a mentoring journal. In the beginning, they will not tell you are accepted or not. You are assigned to 2 different evaluators, one after the other, reviewers who, and they will help you. First, they will help you in improving the manuscript. Until it is ready, the editor-in-chief will make decisions about the article. So they will never tell you no, unless, of course, there are other problems like plagiarism or some other problems. But if it is accepted by the editor-in-chief, then it goes through mentoring through a mentoring process, and you can have it published in about 1 year to 3 months. The TESOL journal takes a long time. It's almost 2 years. 2 years to have a publication in this journal, because as you can imagine, there are many submissions there. And I also can tell you that people around the world are taking this time to submit articles. Many people are taking the opportunity of being at home to start writing, to take writing as an additional task. So we have received more than normal. In the last meeting in the TESOL journal, we had this graph, and I wanted to show it to you to see how people around the world, or the percentage of people around the world who submit to TESOL journal. And this is, look, from Africa, Asia, Central and South America, and I'm in that percentage. Middle East, which is the blue, the light blue. North America, of course, there. So that is the highest percentage of submissions. And then Oceania, yes. So you are here. It's growing very fast. Good for you guys. Also, people might or tend to think that you have to do a very, very deep or very formal kind of research to start publishing, but not always. You have to check what the kinds of articles that the different journals have or accept or take, because there are, for example, there are classroom explorations. There, of course, there are conceptual or theoretical featured articles, current issues, which is kind of a reflective article, an empirical featured article, which is, like, as I said, a very more serious, more established research. You can also start by reviewing a book. You read a book, you can start submitting a review. You can do a research brief, which is, of course, shorter than a complete research article. And there are always special issues. In this moment, for example, there are many journals which are accepting submissions for special issues on COVID-19. So there are many ways to start. This is the Mestizo journal, based in Mexico, but now it's international. And there are articles from, for example, in the last issue, we had articles from all these countries. And as I told you, I have seen articles, recently I have seen articles from Indonesia, which are now in the process of evaluation. What are the main reasons for rejecting articles? What are the main reasons why a journal reject an article? Because the articles do not follow the journal's guidelines. Probably they are good. Probably they are valuable pieces of research, but they do not follow the guidelines of that specific journal. The articles do not respect standards of textuality. These standards of textuality, for example, cohesion, coherence, informativity, situationality, that is appropriate for the situation. You can check this concept and you can see what is needed from what journals expect from articles. Sometimes articles have syntax, punctuation, or spelling typos. the title does not match the content, or the articles do not match the focus of the journal. As I said, they might be very good articles, but they do not align with the focus of the journal. Plagiarism is a big issue right now. Authors do not make the corresponding corrections. You know what? There is a very high percentage of people who submit their articles and they do not continue with the correction processes. Sometimes they get tired, they get overwhelmed, they just take new responsibilities, and they don't continue with this process, or they think it's shorter, but that's one of the reasons. No proofreading. If possible, for example, you can create groups, research groups or publication groups, or as you want to call them, and proofread each other's articles, each other's texts. And mainly because authors do not send articles. Journals need articles. We need your work. We need your research. So start thinking where you are going to send your articles. Yes, academic writing is an issue. You have to go into the genre. For example, a research article, a review, a book review, a classroom exploration, a reflection, etc. You also have to pay attention to the register of the or the appropriacy of the language, the discourse of the article. Sometimes teachers do thesis, write thesis, but a thesis is not an article. Yes, many changes have to be made before you send your thesis as an article. And for example, if you are in your PhD or in your MA, your master's degree, take advantage of your work. Do not send all your complete work to only one article. Split it. Take advantage of all your work and publish two or three articles from your research. Yeah, as I said, one of the easiest way to start publishing is to write about your classroom experiences, especially in this moment, as we saw before. Organization, follow models, follow formats. For example, the IMRD, the introduction, methodology, results, and discussion model. You can find models. You always have to explore the kinds of articles that are published by each journal. Sentences and paragraphs. Try to write complete sentences, complete paragraphs. Number of authors, that is an issue. 3 or 4. I think that in our field, many more than that is not accepted, because we know that 2 people, 3 people end up doing the work. The literature review, your references, your citations must be from sources from 2010 and now. Yes, and APA. Right now, you know that there is a new version of APA. When we were more familiar with 6, now we have APA 7. The peer review processes, as I told you, it might take from 6 months to 2 years. So you have to be very patient. Yes. Of course, rejection is not nice. Yes, we all have been rejected, but we learn from that, and we learn that that it is a process. It's something that we can learn. Yes, and of course, you will be very happy when your article, when your piece of work has been accepted. Yes, but feedback on rejection is always valuable, even when it's not nice. And I have been rejected many times also. So it's not a nice feeling, but it's necessary to If you want, I'm almost finishing, yes. So if you want to publish your work, analyze the genre. Choose the target journal, the newsletter, book, wherever you want to publish your work. Check the kind of articles published. Analyze the guidelines, and if possible, make a checklist. Start, yes, I have done this. Get in touch with the editors or the associate editors. We are always glad to help potential authors. As I told you, journals exist because people, teachers, authors write articles. But most of all, submit your work. Be brave and submit your work. Wait for reviews and decisions. Be patient with the journal, because many journals work or function on the work of volunteers. Yes, we cannot get, or we do not get any money from doing this. That's why I always say that we serve journals. Be patient with the journal, then be patient with yourself. Yes, persevere with corrections. But most of all, be proud of yourself. When you have submitted an article, no matter what the result is, you should be very proud of yourself. You're doing something that not many people are willing to do. So I hope that someday you send me a mail and you tell me I did it. Yes, because I wanted to do it and I did it. So I will be very happy to receive your mails. If you want this presentation, Daniel will have it. Dr. Daniel will have it, but I can also send you, or I can also guide you in your publication process. Thank you very much, and I will be waiting for your questions.
Thank you very much for nice presentations. Give applause to Araceli. Thank you very much, Professor from Benemérita Universidad de Puebla, Mexico. So everyone, we are lucky that we have Araceli, that she is, she has extensive experience in writing, publishing articles in reputable journals. She is now the editor-in-chief in a journal called Lenguas and Contexto, Mexico, and she is also, she just told us, an editor, was the assistant editor in the TESOL journal? Yeah.
Journal, the next TESOL journal too.
And also next TESOL, yeah. Publishing the article in a reputable journal is very demanding for us, Araceli, because that's one of the requirements if we want to promote ourselves for the academic career. For example, yes, the professor, if someone wants to be the professor, so they have to publish something, the article in the reputable
So it's something
journal
that we all have to do in the end.
Right. Okay, everyone, now we have a question and answer session. So if you want to ask question to our presenters, you are welcome. Please unmute your audio if you want to. Well, you may think about the question. Perhaps I would like question to the presenters. First for Patricius. Professor Patricius Diwandono, you know that learning is sort of the activity of processing the information from teacher, for example, given to the students. And dual coding theory is the theory that, if the image and the verbal inputs are associated, then it is easier for the students to remember, right? Because they are associated. Then, in fact, remembering something is a very, very basic thing in the, when we are talking about Bloom taxonomy. So what is your suggestion for the teachers to, when they are teaching, to make the students remember something? do you have any special tips for that, so that the student can remember something, remember the concept easily? Okay, that's for Pak Patricius. And for Mbak Santi, this is very interesting when we are talking about construct irrelevant or construct relevant. This reminds me some things about, like we are really, if we are really sure about the result of the test, for example, if the students have not had breakfast yet in the morning and the room is very hot and they do not feel comfortable to have a test, something like that. And also, the students are afraid of taking the test. Do you think we have to consider these issues when assessing the students, maybe speaking or writing ability? For Araceli, could you tell us the current issues in the English language teaching that reputable editors might be interested in? Because sometimes it is hard for us to see, the current issues, because novelty is the key, the key in the something that chief editor are considering. Okay, thank you. Now, okay, Pak Patus.
Yes, thank you, Pak Daniel. If I'm not mistaken, the question is how to remember the materials or the lessons better.
Yes.
Is that? Yeah. So you can actually create what is called graphic organizer. As you read or as you listen or as you attend to a certain lecture, then you can create a graphic organizer. That's actually a simple drawing that you can do yourself in order to help you remember the most essential points of the lecture. It's like a note-taking, but it's in the form of drawing actually. So it's not full sentences or full linguistic note-taking, but it's in the form of visual graphic organizer. It's called graphic organizer because it actually serves to organize your thoughts. It actually serves to organize the points that you have learned from the lecture or that you have been attending from the lecture. Later, when it comes for you to retrieve the memory or to retrieve the points or the ideas from your mind, the visual organizer or the graphic organizer will help you retrieve that, will help you obtain the ideas that have been residing in your mind. Yeah. But first of all, the requirements of remembering is, of course, you have to listen well. You have to listen well, you have to listen attentively so that you can capture the essence, you can capture the points well. And then you can transfer it to the graphic organizer. And later, when it comes for you to rehearse those points, the graphic organizer will help you retrieve the ideas from your mind or from your long-term memory. Second one, which I also use from time to time, is to create a story around the concept. So I believe that as human beings, we are all creative. We can create a story of our own, which will also help you, which will make it easier for you to recall certain sequence or recall certain topics from the lessons that you have learned, from the lessons that your lecturer has given you. So creating a story is very simple actually. I use this when I try to remember the 12 values of Universitas Machung. I created a story, and the story later helped me a lot in enumerating the 12 values as well as the content of each of the values. Yeah, so creating a story and drawing a graphic organizer can be two of the means by which you can enhance your rehearsal, your remembering of the lessons that you have learned.
Thank you very much, Pak. And I think those tips can be taught to the student as well. Yeah? so the student can also make it part of their learning strategies so that they can remember things easily. Thank you very much, Pak Patricius. Now, Mbak Santi, what about your ideas to my question? Thank you.
All right. Okay. So thank you. I think your question was about certain environment or conditions which might affect learners' performance while they are taking the test. Things like you mentioned, like, for example, the student hasn't had breakfast and may not be able to concentrate fully. So, well, there are things that we as test designers or teachers can actually control, but there are also things that we can't, unfortunately. If it's let's say if it's face-to-face in a classroom setting, then we can control some of the environmental factors, things like whether the room is too hot or the room is too cold. There's something that we can do, or maybe making it not too early, like making the test not too early, for example, or not too late. But then if it's online, I think it's harder to control because we can't possibly control the environmental conditions where our students are. But again, maybe the scheduling is something that we need to consider. So I think as much as we can, we try to consider factors that might influence their performance, especially when we think that the factors might negatively influence their performance or hinder their performance. But there are still, yes, definitely things that are beyond our control, unfortunately. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Pak Santi. Okay, what about Araceli?
Okay. I have written some of the issues I have seen and that might be interesting for journals. Yes, I think. For example, everything that relates learning with social issues. Yes, like communities of practice, what they do together, social practices. Yes, social that relationship between teaching or learning languages and the improvement of a community, those are very trendy topics right now. Technology, of course, everything that has to do with technology right now is very demanded. These concepts as translanguaging, bilingualism, multiculturalism, transnationalism, all those concepts are also right now being explored and being researched. Resilience in times of COVID, self-efficacy, autonomy, and many topics on teacher education. I think those are the ones that I have identified. But I think that probably in your side of the world there are different topics. I don't know what topics you have on over there.
Okay, thank you very much, Araceli. Okay, there is a question from Ms. Yanti. Yeah, Ms. Yanti, will you unmute your audio? You can ask your question directly to the presenters, please. You may unmute your audio. You're welcome. Go ahead. Ms. Yanti, are you here? She has written something about, despite difficulties and challenges we face by remote teaching, is there any excellency of online features that we can make use of during pandemic? Okay, so this question is for who? Yanti. Okay. Maybe Pak Patricius, yeah.
Yes. Okay. So the question is what I would say that it is what kind of excellent online features that will help us during the pandemic, right? Yeah, I think despite all of the limitations and all of the sufferings of the remote teaching, poor connection and low human interaction, yeah, we can capitalize on the ability of technology to make it more permanent. By making more permanent, I mean that once we attend a lecture or once you present a lecture, you can make it more permanent by recording it. And so your recording stays more permanent than if you lecture it offline or face-to-face. Once your recording is made permanent, then other people can make use of it. Your students can replay your video again and again until they understand it better. Yeah, other people can make use of it. Other people can learn from your recording later. If you upload it on YouTube, not only your students can learn your material or your topic, but also other students worldwide. Yeah, it permits a far bigger outreach to the audience out there. Also, from my experience teaching online so far, I've been teaching online since the pandemic set in March. You have the ability of this versatile means of your lecture. If you stand in front of the class, probably it's not quite easy for you to suddenly play a video unless you prepare it beforehand. But when teaching online, you can easily switch to YouTube, for example, and show it to your students. You can just pull out some of the materials from the internet, which you think are relevant to your lessons, and show it to your students immediately, and everybody will see that. Yeah, so it's the versatile nature of our internet technology allows you to do that, and that will help us feel a bit alleviated in our task as teachers during this pandemic time. Yes, I think that's from me, Daniel.
Thank you very much, Pak Patricius. Yeah. Again, Pak Patricius, you know that in remote teaching, sometimes feeling isolated is unavoidable. But although we have a couple of videos or something like that, feeling isolated because of the limitation of the direct interaction with the student. Do you have any special tips, Pak, to optimize teaching presence?
Okay, teaching presence. Yeah, teaching presence is actually when you organize the class, when you organize the online class in such a way so that everybody feels that, okay, this is a lesson, and it is not just a fun gathering party or event like that, but you direct the sessions so that everybody is learning, everybody is listening to the lectures, everybody exchanges discussion and share their points. If that happens, then it is the teaching presence is there. The teacher serves to guide all of the sessions so that everybody is engaged in a learning activity and not in a fun-making or merry-making activity. The way I establish my teaching presence is I have my students turn on their video, and then I, as a teacher, also turn on my video, and I would say, okay, now you do this task, or you listen to my explanation, or now please share your thoughts about the concept that we have just discussed. Yeah, that's one of the teaching presence that I can practice. The other way is also not by turning on the video, but we can also get the students to engage in a chat, in a forum, in a discussion forum. If you use Moodle, for example, then it's very easy to get the students to go to the discussion forum, and then you throw a certain question, and the students will answer that. And that is how we establish teaching presence in our online classroom. Daniel, yes.
Thank you very much, Patricius. That's very interesting ideas and thoughts. So we are going to share the links. So my colleague, Indri, please share the links for the activity camp. Yeah. So you guys, you can fill in the information in the links we have just shared. While you are filling in these informations there, I'm going to ask to Mbak Santi. Mbak Santi, again, you know that there is the so-called authenticity principle. The good test should be, the test taker should think about how similar the test will be like a day-to-day life experience, something like that. Do you think it is important, Mbak Santi, during this kind of, online issues like this? Things about to make it authentic.
Yes, precisely. I think that's got to do with the question from Ibu Yanti earlier. Yeah. Like what online feature that we can make use of that actually can benefit us in the current situation. And I was about to say authenticity, because I think nowadays, even before the pandemic started, a lot of communication actually takes place online, right? I mean, via technology, like, for example, phone call, or we also had video conferencing even before the pandemic started. So again, like online communication has become more and more common. And now that we sort of assess our learners speaking online, I think that will sort of add the authenticity. I think I remember probably like a couple of years back when we wanted to sort of evaluate our students' speaking performance. For example, the context is like, let's say, complain about this service. So call the hotel or call the shop and then complain about this service or whatever. And we used to do it like in a classroom, and they had to pretend that they were not in the same place. But now they don't have to pretend. They can actually, for example, call and complain, or perhaps they can write, they can email the other person, or they can send the email to the teacher complaining about the service that they received. I think in the past, perhaps they had to write it on paper and then submit it, physically to the teacher. So that's a really good point, Daniel. I think, despite all the challenges and sort of like we are all actually not very ready, but it actually has an interesting benefit that we can all sort of make use of. And if I can comment on, again, Buyanti's question about, again, like, what can we do now, or what kind of feature that we can actually benefit? I think, as Araceli mentioned earlier, it's an interesting time. So it's probably actually we can have a new interesting research area. For example, one of these studies that I mentioned earlier by Nakatsuhara et al., where they compared ratings across different conditions, we could see the results. So the results was that audio ratings were found to be lower than video ratings and live ratings. I think that happened in that context, in the IELTS context, where the examiners are usually first language speakers of English, while the test takers are foreign language speakers of English. And when they couldn't see, when the nonverbal features of communication were not available, or maybe the connection wasn't very good, the sound quality was a bit poor, that sort of affected the marking, okay? And because the examiners were probably not familiar with the accent of the test takers, probably you can replicate this study in your context, where you and your learners share the same native language, you share the same first language, and you're familiar with their accent, right? So the results might be different, even without the video, even without the nonverbal features like gestures or facial expressions. Probably you will still understand your students perfectly, and your ratings will still be the same with or without video. So again, that's an interesting area of research, and that's one sort of possibility that you can do. And if you want to know the methodology that they used, you can, I showed you earlier, so you can just read the article and study how they did it. Thank you.
I think that's going to be something that we need to talk to the IEL developers. When you develop a listening, you should include some things like the real, because when people talking, when we see how they are talking, that's going to be easier for us to listen, to get the ideas. What do you think about that, Santi?
There's been a lot of research on that, actually. So adding visual content for listening tests. Yeah, that's, I think, for example, the IBT test, they don't have like the moving picture, they have the still picture. Sometimes they have like something on the board, like written. So again, that adds, or that sort of enhances the message. But they still don't have the video. But yeah, there is an interesting study actually. I think it was published a couple of years ago by Aaron Betty, if I'm not mistaken. It's about exactly about that. So about adding visualization to a listening text and how that might influence our learners' listening performance.
It's interesting, Pak Santi. Now, I'm like to talk to Araceli. Araceli, you know that a lot of people might feel bad, just like me, when we got rejections letter, love letter from the editor. Now, Araceli, do you think that we can learn something from the rejections letter sent by the editor? Do you think we have to give up? And that's the end of everything. What do you think, Araceli? Would you unmute your audio, please?
Yes. No, you should never give up. Why? Because you have heard these terms of literacy. That is something that people can learn. Yes, that's something that people can learn how to do. And the problem is that sometimes people don't pay attention to the genre. And they want to write the same as they write in a different kind of text or different kind of genre. For example, I always tell them that for some genres you need creativity, you need imagination. For academic writing, you don't need imagination, you just need information, and you need to follow certain formats, to follow the guidelines, as I said. So no, it's something that people learn. It's not, we should not take for granted that just because a person knows the language, they can write, or they can write an article, or they can be good at academic writing. This is something that needs to be learned. There is this literacy concept that is how to read, how to write, but in a different way. Yes, so it's academic literacy. and that can be learned. And sometimes writing teachers say just practice and practice, but sometimes, and I have read some studies that say that it's not practice, it's knowledge. What we need is awareness on the genres. It's not only like you practice and practice, because you can be practicing using the same words, the same techniques that you have been doing all your life, and it's not going to take you or to lead you to write to a good article. You need this awareness on academic writing. It's knowledge that can be learned.
Right. So there are a lot of things that we can learn now, and also how we teach ourselves to be a patient person, just like what you said, that in order to be published, to have it published in a reputable journal, it takes a long time. Even for the review, it may take about 6 months. Is that possible? 6 months, Araceli, for review?
It's possible in some magazines, some journals, academic
That's also
journals.
possible.
Yes, it's possible. But I think that the average is about a year and a half. Yes.
Okay, Araceli, you know that some people might not be patient, meaning that, I mean, because of the requirements from the university, some doctorate students are demanded to have it published, Araceli, and we do not have much time. During the review, do you think it is possible to ask the editor-in-chief to something like, excuse me, sir, is it possible to know about how the progress of the review is? What do you
Yes,
think?
but we don't like it. In this moment, I am dealing with that, with one of the authors. Every round of feedback, she says, she sent me a mail yesterday. Time to contact the reviewer. Do you have any news from my article? And the reviewer, once I asked the reviewer to send me it as soon as possible, and the reviewer got angry because he said, if you want quality work, quality review, you have to be patient. And so I have to mediate between them, between impatience of the author and the need, the times of the reviewer. So I cannot tell the reviewer what the author said, and I cannot tell the author what exactly the reviewer said. So you have to mediate. but yes, I think that happens a lot.
It happens a lot.
It happens a lot, but we don't like it. We don't like it.
It means that we have to be patient. Is that right, Araceli? We have to be patient.
Yes, yeah, because I said, as I mentioned, most of the people in this are volunteers, and they do the reviews on top of their work, on top of everything they do the reviews. Yes, because this is a very good way to learn. I think that I have learned the most being a reviewer, being an editor. That's when you learn. Yes, and well, that's something that you learn just by reading what is expected from you, etc. But yes, you need to be patient. There is no other way. In some places you can pay, and I don't know about the philosophy or the policies in other places, and you pay for being published. But in Mexico, I'm talking about Mexico, yes. But here in Mexico, those publications are not as valid as the ones that you don't have to pay.
So everyone, we are lucky to have Ibu Araceli. If you are planning to have your articles published, you can contact her. You can communicate with her how to prepare good review the good article. So I told you again that she is editor-in-chief in Linguas and Contextual Journal, and she has she is also working with some other reputable journals like Max Tessels and TESOL. Yeah, is that right, Araceli? Is it okay for you?
I was very lucky, and I don't know. It's just like you prepare yourself for these tasks. Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Max Tessel and TESOLs are indexed Scopus journals. Okay.
Yes.
All right, Bapak Ibu. Now we've been through this interesting discussion, almost more than 2 hours, and more than 2 hours. That's interesting. Okay, one more chance for you to ask questions before we are going to close. You are invited, everyone. Please, if you want to ask questions, please ask questions directly to the presenter. One more chance. Okay. Okay. So today we have learned a lot of good things, best practices from these 3 great presenters, from Pak Patricius and Mbak Santi and also Ibu Araceli. So everyone, we do hope that today's meeting is going to be very helpful for us as the teachers and also as the students learning foreign languages. And okay, anyone want to ask questions before we're going to close? No? I do hope that everyone, you've filled in the information, the link that we just shared in the chat box. So once again, I'd like to thank you very much for Pak Patricius.
You're welcome, Pak.
Ibu Santi and Ibu Leticia Araceli Salas. And Mbak Santi now is in UK. What time is it now, Mbak Santi? So sorry for keeping you wake up. And also Araceli Salas, good evening. Thank you very much. And we would like to close this webinar, and I'd like to send my best greeting, warm greeting to all of you, and stay healthy. Thank you very much.
Okay, goodbye, everyone. Thank you.
And goodbye, everyone, and thank you for all the attendance.
Bye.
Yeah.
It was really nice.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Mbak Indri,
Bye.
please bring over. Okay, goodbye. Goodbye.
Bye.
Universitas Majung merupakan tempat di mana pengetahuan dan inovasi berkomitmen sejak tahun 2007. Universitas Majung menawarkan lingkungan yang nyaman untuk belajar sehari-hari karena letaknya yang cukup strategis di Kota Malang. Memasuki 1 dekade pertama, Universitas Majung menerapkan sistem trilingual, yaitu mewajibkan mahasiswa untuk menggunakan bahasa Indonesia, bahasa Inggris, dan bahasa Mandarin. Universitas Majung berkomitmen untuk memberikan kualitas pendidikan yang tinggi dan pendidikan berkarakter. Universitas Majung memiliki 3 fakultas, yakni yang pertama, Fakultas Ekonomi Bisnis, yang kedua, Fakultas Sains Teknologi, dan yang terakhir adalah Fakultas Bahasa dan Seni. Universitas Majung memiliki 10 program studi, antara lain International Business Management, akuntansi, sistem informasi, teknik industri, kimia, farmasi, desain komunikasi visual, teknik informatika, pendidikan bahasa Mandarin, dan sastra Inggris. Integritas 12 nilai-nilai yang ditanamkan kepada mahasiswa, yaitu orisinal, terpercaya, gigih, kreatif, dinamis, ramah dan menyenangkan, meritokratik, profesional, bertanggung jawab, sinergi, rendah hati, citizenship. Universitas Majung juga memberikan pendidikan karakter dalam banyak bidang sosial, pengembangan diri, bakat dan minat, kepemimpinan, penalaran. Universitas Majung dalam global bekerja sama dengan beberapa perusahaan, di antaranya adalah Microsoft, Oracle, Cisco, ISEC, Danareksa, Prometric, ADGI, dan lainnya. Selain itu, Universitas Majung memiliki kegiatan untuk mahasiswanya, antara lain road track, Majung Pecinta Alam, basket, astronomi, Majung Music Club, dan lainnya. Itulah komitmen kami untuk terus mengembangkan pendidikan di Kota Malang. Universitas Majung, build a brighter tomorrow.
Have you ever been to Indonesia?
Follow us.
Perfect weather. Authentic. Immersion. Rich in flavor.
Discover yourself.